So I will introduce Claire very briefly. And thank you. I see that my team has brought Claire up already. Claire, I would share Claire has been a truly awesome support here at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute. She has been a really sound advisor to me as a CEO. She has tremendous board experience, as you would see from her profile. At present, she's the Managing Director of British American Insurance, Trinidad and Tobago. She's also on the board of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. But what I love most about Claire is her background, a very strong background as a Chief Audit Executive. It brings a strong inquiring mind, and you guys will see that in today's session from the insights that she will share as she moderates today's session. So Claire, it is my pleasure to hand over our opening panel to you, where we would be looking at innovation and how we can improve that in our small countries.
Thank you very much, Kamala. But this morning, my plan was to make sure that we focus on these four gentlemen. The time is short, so I don't think that I will be speaking much at all. The wealth of information, experience, expertise that I'm seeing here, each of these four thought leaders would be given the maximum opportunity to share their thoughts, their experience, their advice to us. And I do believe that we'll be having the most exciting panel of the 2-day session. Although yesterday's act was very hard to follow, but I know that my panel is going to be doing great this morning. So welcome, panelists. Yes, I have the pleasure of interfacing with you to make sure that we get the best out of you for the benefit of all of the participants and anyone who would be listening to the recording hereafter. Starting with Daryl Lim, who is the founder, managing partner, design thinker of Singapore. And he's a leader in design thinking with 2 decades of experience creating people-centric solutions. And I think that as a design thinker, we would be able to get some exciting, innovative ideas coming from Daryl. John Crawley is the lead partner, Expert Partners Ireland. Welcome to our small state, John. And he is a chartered accountant like myself, but he also has extensive experience in NGOs, government agencies, private sector, internationally, including Ireland, UK, Switzerland, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. So his wide experience is not only coming from Ireland, but global. We do have Mark Persaud, and he's a fellow Trinidadian, Trinbagonian. He's coming from Trinidad and Tobago, and he's a co-founder and director of Caribbean Dragons. And Mark works with high potential startups and developing the venture capital space in the region. And that alone says a lot for Mark. So we are expecting that Mark will give us a lot of his entrepreneurship experience. He's a serial entrepreneur. And I think he's going to kill that session today, as any serial persons, you know. And last but not least, we have Phillip Jackson, Science and Technology Coordinator, Government of St. Vincent and Grenadines from the St. Vincent. Welcome, Phillip. And as we said before, he has spent years as advisor in innovation and digital business at the Caribbean Export Development Agency. And he remains with his main interest being innovation and the possibilities for developing countries at the intersection of technology, consumer, and global partnership trends. So the theme of this morning's session being promoting innovation for long-term success. It is all about how do we see technology making the difference in these small states in the boardroom and throughout the various day-to-day practices in any organization, in any industry. So because as we know, technology and innovation have become very strategic in all organizations, regardless of the type and size of the organization and where they may be located. So starting with Daryl. Daryl, I would like to invite you to give us 10 minutes on your thoughts.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Kamla, as well, for inviting me to join in this this conference. Yesterday's speech was extremely inspirational. Where I heard a lot about Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, and everything like that. I will briefly talk a little bit about that, how it has affected us, how our Mr. Lee had affected us, or at least not in my era. At least they were in my parents' era, and how it changed us, and what kind of mentality he was trying to introduce in terms of innovation, especially in times like those, and what had happened. But before I get there, the question comes to me as I read the title of our the topic, innovation. What really is innovation? So I asked myself, and I asked myself very often in Singapore as well, what is innovation and what are our organizations doing to innovate their practices? And typically I tend to see very often innovation for the sake of innovation, right? For the sake of technology being there, therefore everyone must have a CRM system, must have a HRMS system, must have all sorts of management system. But at the end of the day, when I really speak to these organizations, what problems are you trying to solve? Nothing. It's available, there are support systems, there are grants that we could adopt, and therefore we adopted them. Only to realize that the distance between the power distance or the relationships between staff and organization really stretches even further, and this whole relationship that we used to have becomes more and more strained because we have lesser face-to-face communication. So I think I have 5 important points I want to bring out because I have 10 minutes. So I want to bring out 5 very important key points. Number 1, are we using new ways to innovate old practices? How about thinking about this? Using old practices to innovate new ways, focusing on identity enhancing, right? I think during COVID-19, we realized that with the adoption of new technology, new innovation, we have really become much smarter. But it also brought to us that realization. As I studied, I realized that a lot of Singaporeans in Singapore kind of ask themselves this question: why am I still in this job that I don't like? Parents, because we are all stuck at home, parents would ask their children, why are you in this job? If you really don't like your job, why are you still here? Why are you sulking at me during lunch, during dinner? This brought to mind this question: am I really in my dream job? Am I really doing something that I was made for? Am I really fulfilling that promise that I gave to my parents when I took on this degree program in this university? A lot of these times the answer was, I'm not sure. I'm here because I have been here for very long. So really, I think one of the ways of innovation to us is really re-emphasizing what is that person's core values? Who is this person? What is this person's mission, or what is this organization's mission? That is my first kind of comment that I would like to bring up. Number 2, that iterative mindset that not all of us have. A lot of us get into innovation with the thought that let's start to productize, let's heavily invest in this, let's get everyone involved. But I would probably just say dream big, but start small. Right? There will always be problems. There will always be teething. Nobody gets a success at the first try, right? Maybe some do, but it is very rare. I think in terms of dreaming big, start little prototypes. Start that test, fail, but fail well. A lot of us don't give due diligence to failing, right? When we think about failing, we quickly write a report, get it over and done with. Let's try again. Let's try something else. But we don't give enough due diligence to learning about what had gone wrong. Who were the ones that kind of made it better, and who were the ones that was kind of causing the problems? I think that helps us to really understand problems don't stem out from systems alone. Problems most of the time stems out from human beings, right? We talk about sustainability. We can introduce many new innovative ways to prevent usage of plastics. But at the end of the day, when you get back home, you have to throw your rubbish into something. Is it a plastic bag? Perhaps. So what are we doing? Are we creating more trouble with innovation? Something to think about. Third, I think invest in human-centered designs. A lot of us invest in technology that does not help human-centeredness, does not help that human journey, that journey of that staff, that journey of that promoter, the supporter, or even your competitors, right? Interestingly, one of the objectives that I like to introduce to my clients would be, how would you be able to convert your competitors to become your partners in driving that mission? Because we can only do that much. But if they have been competing with you, they are probably at some level equal to you. Why not? Can you build them as your partners, and can you work together with them to drive your mission? That's something that can be very noble, but in a very complex and a complex situation like sustainability, is it can you do it yourself, or do we need a whole village to help us introduce this change and boundary crossing? Number 4, start encouraging ecosystems that support entrepreneurships, and small innovators. I think that's something that's important. Now, I want to bring this up by talking about starting at the very start of that design. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about co-creation, if I'm not wrong, Kamla. I think you briefly brought up a little bit about co-creation, and the co-design. This is exactly where it starts. I think when we come out with an idea, we a lot of us tend to have I want to be first, I want to be the loudest so that I can be the pioneer. But I think it is important that these designs can be shared with everyone, because only then we get that kind of change, we get the kind of little tests that can be distributed, the accountability of delivering some of these actions, and people who help us cross the boundaries. One of the recent courses I attended in Singapore is this course called Boundary Crossing. I always love change. Part of my work is all about change management, change design, and things like that. And when I started to learn about boundary crossing, I started to realize that, crossing boundaries, to me, it's like changing an ecosystem into another. It is not a solo effort. It is not even a corporate effort. It is a group of different stakeholders at different levels, helping to introduce, helping to broker, helping to cajole, or helping to just simply implement, or even just follow through. It needs a whole group of people. And I think we are all in this position. And when we talk about leadership, yesterday we talked about Lee Kuan Yew's leadership and why he was able to implement changes in Singapore. Well, I don't think that he had full clarity of what was going on with all the different races. We had all our fair share of every sort of violence or crimes or stuff like that. We had racial riots. We had our violence. We had we had really high crime rates at that point in time. And for Lee Kuan Yew, I think what he possessed was that little value of learning by doing. And he introduced it as a design to Singapore and the Singapore leaders, to me. And in every single housing estate in Singapore, there is a certain number of percentage of different races intentionally put together. So let's say if we have 100 households in this building, 10% goes to Chinese, 50% goes to Malays, a certain number of percent goes to another race, and a certain percent goes to another race. It was a clever design, because what we didn't want was to have a block of a housing estate to challenge another housing estate because of their race, right? But in this scenario, humans being humans, we learn to live with each other. I mean, you're my neighbor. How long can I be angry with you? For how long can that last? Seriously. Eventually, when I step out of the door that morning, I'm not going to frown at you every single day of my life. It makes my life worse, right? But that's it. That little good morning, hi, And you know, that little bit makes that co-creation, starts that little bit of co-creation. How do I live with my neighbor? How do I make this living and this daily meeting an enjoyable one? That's when design begins. Putting things together, and we call that learning by doing. Putting things together and allow for changes to happen. Give it time, give it space, and look at some of these little successes and help to transform these challenges to become opportunities for innovation. And that's what we mean by human-centeredness. These little difficulties become your opportunities for pivotal success. Yeah? So, well, my little takeaway for today is, if you want to change the world, change with humans one at a time. I'll hand this back to Claire.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Change the world through changing the human one at a time. Yes. Thank you. So we now have John.
Got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. I'm going to talk to you about friends, folks. Hello, my name is John Crawley, and I'm from Ireland. That small little nation in the Pacific. It's one step Europe, another step America. And the angle I'm going to talk to today about, as a small nation, as a small island, how can we punch above our weight, and how did we punch above our weight? And we decided that the way we were going to do it is that we were going to have friends. We have 5 million people on our island, and we have 75 million of a diaspora. We have friends everywhere. How do you know us? Well, on the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day, the world goes green. From the Eiffel Tower to the Burj Khalifa, okay, to the Seine, it all runs green. We punch above our weight. And how do we do that? Because we very quickly caught on to the idea that nurturing relationships was a way forward for a small nation. Let's think about that in a little bit more detail. How did we do that? Well, we were traditionally a country in the 1800s where many people had to emigrate because of famine and went to the different parts of the world, generally following the English diaspora, okay, but going to America as well. And that created a connection base for us. Let's whiz into the middle of the 20th century. In the 1950s, coming out of agricultural Ireland, our economy was not doing well. And our government at the time said, let's make friends. We started off in a very simple way, but in a very commercial way. To get from the US to Europe and vice versa by aeroplane, planes did not have fuel tanks big enough to be able to carry you the full way. They needed to stop somewhere. Where did the majority of the planes stop? They stopped in Shannon in Ireland. When you get off a plane and you have to transit, that is a boring experience, okay, unless there's a duty free. And what did we do? In the 1950s, we invented duty free. And now all of a sudden, wandering around an airport was an experience, because guess what? You could buy stuff cheaper than you could buy it on the high street, and you could mingle with other people. We started to make friends because they had to come to us, because they had to stop off and refuel. So we said, as we would say in Ireland, Céad Míle Fáilte, welcome to our little island. You might be here for an hour, you might be here for a couple of hours. While you're here, buy some of our product, drink some of our Guinness. Aren't we all friends? Then we sort of thought, hang on, maybe we can do this a little bit differently. Maybe we can progress this. We joined clubs. You joined clubs to meet friends. We went 3 ways principally. The first way we went east. We went to our special neighbor in the UK, who we have a very special relationship with. We have some challenges, but we have a very special relationship with. And we developed a very strong relationship that has stood the test of time. The UK went their Brexit route. We still travel in a common area with the UK. We share a border. with them. We made friends when we went east. We went south. We joined the EU club. That took us into a gang of other friends, a gang of other people that we could work with, a gang of other people that we could add some value to. Going south, we made friends. We went west. We go to America. We're one of the few countries, okay, that on St. Patrick's Day, okay, you know, we have an audience with whatever president there is at a given time. The new one, of course, who has a golf course in Ireland. Love him or hate him, he's still a friend. Okay, that's still the way we work. We work with friends. So what if you have friends? You know, there's got to be something in it for everybody. Okay, what's in it for our friends? Well, there's a couple of things in it for our friends. We offer neutrality. Okay, come what may, we are a neutral state. Okay, we are not ambivalent about security, but we offer neutrality. We offer a special tax regime. We've got great tax incentives in our country that makes it worthwhile for people to want to invest in our country. We offer a very highly skilled workforce, 3 areas in particular that we have very strong skills. In the pharmaceutical sector, we're a big center on pharmaceutical. In the IT sector, we're a very big player in the IT market. We also train a lot of very, very highly qualified doctors, surgeons, nurses, and professionals from all over the world. So we provide a skills base. We were actually one of the few European countries in the 1980s, and I was involved in it at the time, to offer Islamic finance to the Muslim community, okay, where we can offer finance that's generally preserved in the Gulf area, and yet we could operate Islamic finance out of Europe. We speak English, or at least we speak a variation of English, okay, we speak Irish English. And therefore, because we speak English, and because we're members of other clubs, particularly the EU, we're easy to talk to if you're American, if you're Australian, if you're from the Far East, because we can speak to you in English, and then we can speak in French and German and all the other languages, okay, that are part of the club, okay? What else, what else is a unique offering for us? Per capita, we take in more migrants from war-torn areas than pretty much most countries do. Why do we do that? Because when times were tough, people took us in. It's about repaying friendships. It's about being friends. Now, we made mistakes. There's no doubt about that. Friends fall out. Friends make mistakes. But what's the number one lesson that you learn when you make mistakes? You say sorry to your friends, and then they remain your friends. They stay your friends because you said sorry. We had a Celtic tiger in Ireland where property prices blew. We used to say if you threw a $50 bill up in the air, it would land as a $500 note. Those were the Celtic tiger days. We lived above our means. We got ourselves into trouble. We needed friends to come in and bail us out. Our good friends in the UK were first in the door with big checks. The IMF followed very quickly. The EU followed very quickly. We gave them all their money back. That's what you do. You say, sorry, please help. You say sorry again, and you repay. We've walked away from violence and conflict. Northern Ireland was a war-torn area. We've learned lessons from that. I don't mean to name drop, but in conversations that I had, because I was briefly involved in the peace process in Northern Ireland, but sitting in a room with Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams from the provisional side and David Irvine from the Republican side, they were telling stories, and I was one of the business leaders involved in the discussion, of the importance of creating friendship after conflict. And they talked about a visit that they had to South Africa to meet Nelson Mandela, and the thought process he had around forgiveness and maintaining friends. And the ask that they had was, we're asking people who have been fighting with each other, who have been making commercial profit from that, to give that up, to walk away from their illegal businesses, and to actually find a way to actually replace their income in a legitimate way. And they looked down the table at me, a banker at the time, and saying, you've got to bank these guys. You've got to bank guys that previously walked around with Kalashnikovs and son-off shotguns and, and balaclavas, because we need to rehabilitate them. We need to bring them back in. And yet again, small island nation, we said, friends are friends no matter what. And if we all say sorry to each other and we all make up, we can keep the diaspora. It doesn't matter whether it's war, it doesn't matter whether it's commerce, it doesn't matter whether it's disease. We can always be friends for each other. So what do Ireland have to offer as a potential solution? Well, can you learn from us, or can we contribute in some way by understanding the power of talk? Can we talk? The power of singing. Can we sing? The power of partying. Can we party? The power of listening. The power of learning from each other. You got a friend in me. Back to you guys.
Thank you very much, John. And I think that brings to mind that co-creation, where it is that you need that human being, because I think oftentimes we forget that the human part of us comes first before we can think innovation. You have to go back to that human nature, make sure that it's not one mind that can innovate. We need to innovate collectively, and we need to build those bridges and that friendship. Thank you again, John. And we move on to Mark.
Thank you so much to Kamlan Institute for inviting me to participate today and contribute. I'm really honored to be part of such an esteemed panel, and congrats everybody. I hear yesterday was a fantastic day, so congrats on how well everything's going. The Institute is a partner of two institutions that are dear to my heart, the local stock exchange in Trinidad and Tobago, where I'm from, as well as the TNT Chamber of Industry and Commerce, on whose board I sit as a director. So it's really a pleasure to be here. You heard from Claire that my lens today will be through the eye of a high potential startup, or that sphere. So, but I wanted to begin with the idea of innovation and why it's so important to at least the Caribbean small island states. So when you sort of look at the data from the World Economic Forum, and you understand that for small island states, or I guess I would say emerging economies in a general sense, to be able to get to a place of further development, to get to a place of better quality of life, social equity, social justice, on that road, one of the main triggers to catalyze that journey and be able to leapfrog and have that journey be a little bit faster is the main element of innovation. If your society is innovating, in general sense, you can speed up that journey towards that place where you want to go, that goal of better quality of life. And if you sort of regress that graph a little further, one of the main components there is the high potential startup or the entrepreneurial world. Some people call it SMEs or MSMEs. So that is one of the main reasons why we have to focus on innovation. And I'll just give you 5 quick pillars on what innovation can look like. You know, and I think a lot of the innovation is directly linked to the SDGs of the world. So we have things like financial inclusion and new capital markets that can be developed. We have diversity and inclusion that's hard baked into many founders. Digital transformation is really propelled by a lot of small companies doing new things on apps or through SaaS or through AI. So those folks are helping digital transformation. Foreign direct investment is directly driven by our startup and our entrepreneurial community. In Trinidad and Tobago and many of the islands, we need foreign exchange. So that's another way. And of course, the big one in the middle is climate action through the green and blue economies. That's a real thrust of many of the startups I've worked with. And so they are directly driving those initiatives. So for me, that's the why we have to focus on innovation and why we have to focus on, or not ignore, the startup or small business community. Now, why is it for us a challenge in our region, the Caribbean region to be specific? I think we have great potential here, but because of how the countries have evolved over time, the region evolved over time, the fact that we have different geographies and therefore different jurisdictions, different countries, I use the word fragmented a lot. We're very fragmented as an ecosystem, as a startup ecosystem. We're under-supported, underfunded, and we lack access to the knowledge and connections that would effectively help us scale. So just to give you an example, a founder in Trinidad and Tobago immediately has a mental, emotional, intellectual, physical block on scaling beyond Trinidad and Tobago, and they build their product just to innovate in a local market. Why is that a problem? It's because capital won't follow that founder unless they can scale. So the founder gets maybe a little bit of local capital and then stalls immediately at the ceiling of their geographic boundary, but in a mental way and an emotional way as well. The Caribbean, why is it important? Again, the why is the Caribbean is very sensitive, right? We have hurricanes, the tourism industry can be hit. Trinidad and Tobago, Colombia is built on commodity pricing, on energy. That can be hit easily. And of course, agriculture. So the hurricanes can affect, or global warming can affect agriculture, but also the movement away from agriculture is a big issue for us, and that increases our import bill for foods. And of course, because of that, even countries in the Caribbean that are producing foods, there's a lot of cost to transportation intra-Caribbean, right? So we have a lot of challenges, but the great thing is there's a great opportunity raising its head now. And I think we at Caribbean Dragons, we kind of crafted in five ways. So we want to craft an integrated, trustworthy community. The main word here is trust. To build a strong startup innovation ecosystem, you have to have trust. You have to have inspiration, the mentors and the coaching who are advising both the innovators as well as the capital providers. And therefore, you have to provide a low barrier for those potential investors, de-risk them. And we can get into all this in the questions, but just going brevity for time's sake. You have to embed the innovation management methodology. And I love Daryl's background, because one of the things we're trying to do in this region is also the innovation management methodology includes design thinking, which is very nascent in our region, to be very honest, Daryl. It's not something that at this point in time is prevalent in our MBA classes or our business classes. It needs to get there. And so one of the things we want to do is try and help with that. And then connectivity. So how do you take the friction out of the ecosystem? How does a Trinidadian founder find a Jamaican founder? How does a Jamaican investor find a Barbadian mentor? How do we take that friction out? And then how do we trade with South America as well? So for me, that's the opportunity, which I think is wonderful. So the big vision for us is to have a globally competitive Caribbean innovation ecosystem. And for Caribbean Dragons, we want our role to be the innovation keystone. So we want to foster those connections, share that knowledge, and take that friction out, take those roadblocks out, and then really try to empower our people to be creative and innovative, design thinkers, and put in that layer of trust that I always talk about. So that's kind of where we want to be. We have a lot of roadblocks, a litany of them that goes between trust, knowledge gaps, a cultural preference to work for somebody rather than be an innovator, experience gaps, lack of a hatred of risk, lack of funding, small fragmented markets, nobody to follow, lack of data, lack of intergovernmental support and collaboration. So we have a lot of things we need to work on, but we think those 5 pillars I described before, if we get those right, they can help with a lot of the roadblocks that we're facing. So our approach is in 3 main parts: connect, learn, and build. The connect is, as I say, to try to build those stable bridges, to put a seamless ecosystem together. So we do that in a few ways. We have a large startup summit just finished in July called Ignite Innovation Summit. Is happening next June. We're trying to build country champions in each country to put data into the system and take data out. We're creating an online platform so people can see and meet and talk about it with each other. We have a grassroots series, monthly podcasts, and newsletters. So that's how we're trying to connect. I mean, still in its nascent stage. Caribbean Dragons is a nonprofit that's only 9 months old. So we're still young, but we're working really, really hard. We also have the Learn bit, which is, again talks about innovation management. So here we have training programs, especially for young people, So in December, we're hosting a 30 student, 17-year-old student, just about to matriculate out of high school, to teach them about design thinking, Daryl. So really exciting about that. A quarterly webinars and mini hackathons. And then the last bit is the build, which focuses on the investment side a little bit. So we're trying to build out an innovation studio so people can physically see each other and replicate that on a few islands. And we're also trying to help with the diaspora investing in innovation in the Caribbean. There are lots of diaspora that now think it's very cool to invest back into their roots, and we have to capitalize on that. So we're working on that capital side, and then also on the founder side, trying to develop the founders to become investable opportunities. So build a pipeline of that, give these founders business services, consultancy, strategy, design thinking, IP, connecting them to the practitioners who do these things. Caribbean Dragons can't do all of that ourselves. We're not IP experts, but we have lawyers who want to volunteer and establish these alliances with the folks around the Caribbean, one of which is the Institute, the Governance Institute. Governance is incredibly important for startups. Even though they don't think it's important, if they want to get investment, governance is absolutely critical, and building a strong decision-making framework so that when people invest in you, they know that the decisions are tested on where to go, where to pivot, what to build, and who to take investment from, who to acquire possibly. So the governance framework is something that is so alien to startups that we have to really work on that. And then the last thing I will say is that other than the conference that we're having in June, which is really, really exciting, we bring in lots of folks to try to meet each other face to face and understand. So we have investors, we have angel investors, we have multinationals, we have banks, we have founders, we have mentors, we have all the different practitioners, service providers we try and bring together. But what our newest venture is that now that we have a pipeline, one of the biggest problems we have in the Caribbean to fund innovation and fuel innovation is capital. Not in Silicon Valley, not in London, not in Singapore, those markets are developed. But Caribbean Dragons is by default having to work on both sides of the coin. So we're now launching, I think, the Caribbean's first sort of venture capital fund, small venture capital fund to focus on the Caribbean and to try to give those high potential companies the next stage of capital, to bridge between grant capital to private capital. And that's our main focus. So just a minute over there, but I want to share all that with you guys. That's what we're dreaming about in the innovation space. So hand it back to you, Claire, and look forward to questions and the discussion afterwards. It's a lot, sorry. I get very passionate.
Yes, we recognize that, Mark. Thank you very much. Yes, again, that human connection for innovation, and I think that that funding seems to be a very significant part of innovation, whereas we would have thought that the innovators, they get themselves into the little garage and they innovate from there, single-mindedly. But what we are seeing so far from all the speakers, it's all about that human connection. So we move on to Phillip.
Good morning, everyone. And hello from the beautiful and unspoiled islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation, Kamla. And the conversation so far by Daryl and John and Mark is like music to my ears, literally, especially John played two cameos there. So I'm very happy to be here. And when you think about long-term innovation, long-term, you have to talk vision, right? Because what sort of Caribbean we want to live in, and how do we want to project ourselves, not only to ourselves, but to the rest of the world, 20, 30, 50 years. So that is what I take at what's the importance of visioning. And there is a high level framework, paradigm that I've been working on in recent times, considering this question. I call it development as empathy. Yeah, and it was so good to hear almost everybody talking about the human-centric approach and how important people are to the development process. So it sort of, the comments of my colleagues so far sort of validates what I've been thinking, and development as empathy. And obviously, this speaks to how we do development, not necessarily how we measure it. Some people talk about development as happiness. That's more from a measurement perspective, but development as empathy is about how we do development. And why? Because many of the development paradigms, the economic paradigms and structures have left a lot of people behind, left entire populations disenfranchised. We have left them holding the cost of development without the benefits. And so we have to aim for what I call values-based innovation as part of our collective future, and then think creatively about how we meet the needs of people and the sort of values that would drive how we think about business, how we think about the organization of our societies, how we think about the organization of our economies, and meeting these values and these needs through values is as a business objective in itself, and rather than just maximizing for profits. Yeah. And I think we as a Caribbean, we have to spend some time thinking very deeply, all politicians, business people, civil leaders, educators, etc., our artisans, come together and let's think about how are we going to create a Caribbean, a collective Caribbean, because we need to have a collective approach, simply because we need the sort of economies of scale to remain relevant and to remain competitive. And we cannot go it alone, though that might be a temptation by some politicians. But as a region, we need to think collectively so we could get that economies of scale to create the sort of tipping points that we need. So let me give an example. Our education system can benefit a lot from a values-based innovation, because if you take a look, there are a lot of persons who are not achieving like they should. And that's because the systems seem to be lazily accommodating to the elite students, right? So there's an opportunity to think, listen, no child should be left behind. How do we innovate to make sure that our education system and its platforms and so on brings together in a very effective partnership the school, the home, and the resources in the community, including in the diaspora. So to ensure that everybody can see, oh, this is what the curriculum is like. We can all see it, and we can all think creatively how we can participate. And the persons in the diaspora can think, yeah, I can become a mentor. So that although the Caribbean suffers a lot from brain drain, but we can think about brain circulation. Yeah. Let people go, let them develop their skills and experiences, competencies, but how do they bring that back to the development agenda? And so there's an opportunity there to think about, yes, if no child left behind is important, because we will definitely need this sort of human capital to drive any type of innovation that we need. And therefore we have to make sure that we are maximizing our slender human resources. So in a very empathetic way, how do we make sure that our systems, or how do we design both as a system and business to make sure that we're giving every single student the best opportunity possible? Then we have to think about innovation to make sure our farmers are getting the best deals for their hard work. For too long, farmers have been just getting the minuscule part of the value chain. And so if we're going to talk about values-based innovation for long-term sustainability, we have to make sure that all of our citizens, especially those who put in a lot of the hard work what we call the base of the pyramid, is getting greater value for the efforts. And so we have to design systems to make sure that marketing intelligence is really good and that the farmers can see the real value of their product and demand more from the markets and so on. So that's another example of development as empathy. And then we look at, there are many indigenous communities, not just indigenous, local communities who are not fully participating in one of our major economic enterprise, which is tourism. Too much of our tourism is just based on foreign direct investment, which is critical, which is needed. But innovation for long-term sustainability would tell us we need to now focus on our community assets, our cultural assets, our heritage assets within a framework of community-based experiential tourism. How do we invest the time and effort and so on and resources to make sure that we can say to the rest of the world, this is an experience that is worth having at the base of our communities, and you pay for that, and our people can benefit from that model of tourism. And so, of course, we would have the all-inclusives on one side, those tourism driven by FDIs, but then we're saying to the rest of the world, the Caribbean is a place of top experience tourism where you can experience our culture, our history, our heritage at the base of the community, and the community is benefiting in real substantial ways from that. Development as empathy, values-based, and development. And then we sell ourselves as one region with easy travel between the spaces and say the Caribbean is a place to live and work, to love, to lighten up, you know, and leave a legacy. And we in doing so, we have to then think about, what are the emerging consumer trends that can drive innovation sustainably in the region? And then what are the collective resources that we have to meet these consumer trends? So I've been working on a few. For example, one I call the authentic avatar. Who is the authentic avatar? This is a person who sees himself as a global citizen. A one love, one world, in a Bob Marleyan style, one love kind of way. I'm part of one global village, and I want to come and experience St. Vincent or Trinidad at the roots of it all. In a very rootical way, I want to experience these island spaces. And for 2 weeks or so, I become like a vicarious Vinci or vicarious Trini. You know, I want to do what the locals do. I want to drink what they drink. I want to puff what they puff if they're puffing, you know, that sort of stuff. And I think that's one of the emerging consumer trends. And of course, then there's the other one, conscientious consumers, people who value the way things are produced ethically. It's family-based production. It's not exploitative or child labor, or it's not just maximized for profit, but it takes a interest in a holistic community development, collectives and so on at the base, doing the things together. And people say, yeah, this is an enterprise I want to support. This is something exciting I want to be part of. And then there's another opportunity, which is that I believe that there's a lot of global good, what I call global goodwill out there. People with serious money, resources, but not just resources, people with lots of ideas and so on, but they're looking for what I call a pseudo spirituality. They may not be very religious people, but they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And they're looking for partners in the global space where they say, hey, I like what these guys are doing. I could be part of this. I feel as though I'm more connected. I feel as though I'm giving value back to the world. And the Caribbean can say, hey, we are the type of people you're looking for. But what we need to do is to create the type of community-based organization that are accountable. transparent, yeah, responsive, inclusive, you know, and that says, hey, we want you to become a global partner with us because we're doing something great in these spaces. Come on as part of social enterprise and let's deliver value. And I believe that folks will say, yeah, something great is happening in the Caribbean. These people are responsive, they're accountable, they're transparent. And so I can work with this vision. When they come, they feel as though, yeah, I'm part of something bigger than myself. So this is a really big untapped, what I call global goodwill or global social capital, I think is on top and is a great era, I think, for innovation going forward.
Yeah.
And but how many more minutes? Yes, I see Claire coming on.
Yes.
Yeah, Claire, you break.
Thank you, Phillip.
Yeah, because when I talk about these things, I get really excited. But
Yes,
yes. So just to sum it up,
Mhm.
I think that there's great opportunity to have a very empathetic approach to development, to look at
Right.
values that last, and to see ourselves as a space where global citizens who can buy into our vision can come and be part of a place where we live and work together, we love, we lighten up, and we leave a legacy. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Phillip. Yes. So what you actually saw coming through is that ecosystem that supports innovation, and that came through all of the speakers. The people element, that demand for collaboration, becoming your friends, the funding issues. I think we have one question coming from Ulrich Miller pertaining to the impact of regulation on innovation and how does that fit within that ecosystem so that although we are small states, we can have the right regulatory system to drive that innovation. So what are your thoughts? John, I would call on you first.
So my experience of regulation is that people can take two approaches to it. They can say, oh my God, all this regulation, slowing down business, okay, obstacles, etc. Why do we have regulation? We have regulation because we're not good at doing stuff on our own. Okay, you know, we take shortcuts, we don't learn lessons, we don't do things right and do the right thing. So we need a friend, back to my friend, to actually keep tabs on us from time to time. We should embrace regulation. And if we don't like regulation, we should then lobby and influence to make sure that it's more fit for purpose. I spend a lot of time training regulators. And the one question they keep saying to me is, why do people that we regulate not come forward more with their ideas, okay, from an industry point of view, from a society point of view, as to how regulation should be done better, rather than filling in forms and ticking boxes? Be friends with the regulator, embrace what they're trying to do, okay, and work with them.
Yes, it's like telling people be friendly to the auditors.
Why not?
Yes, so it comes back again to that trust and respect.
It does.
Yes, so that trust and respect would allow you to be able to partner with each other and get the benefits from it. And so I think it was,
Daryl wants to add a point as well.
Yeah, okay.
yes, Daryl.
Thank you very much. Well, I think Phillip also wanted to add in something, but let me just quickly. I was passionate about this question. You know, I don't know. I do feel that regulation sometimes stifles innovation. I think Mark could probably resonate with this because you don't fund things that are unprecedented, right? Because if it has never existed, it is difficult to justify a certain set of funding or support if it's never been justified. So I think regulations probably need to be a bit more I don't know, innovative or a bit more supportive of that true spirit of innovation, being able to test out what has not yet existed and yet can create value. I think that's very important.
And hence my next question to the panel, starting with Mark. That value element, that trust element,
Yeah.
do you see it as a driver for innovation? And how do we ensure that it is there if it is supposed to be a driver?
Yeah, so I mean, all the research we did before we started Dragons was around building innovation ecosystems. And everything we went through, trust was pretty much the most critical ingredient. And it's re-echoed in our work when we do a lot of work with the IDB, International Development Bank. They have a section for smaller businesses called IDB Labs. They will tell you the same thing, that it's trust, and then it's reinforced by, we do a lot of work with PwC, and one of their main pillars to build the ecosystem is trust. So I mean, you can't build an ecosystem without it, basically. And how do you put it in? I think it's a cultural shift. So that's one of the things we designed Dragons to try to be a trust layer. But Dragons being a trust layer is not scalable. So if you have to, so in other words, we have to build a brand. We have to build an optical brand, but a true brand in trust. So we have to be well governed ourselves. We have to promote good governance. We have to promote good investors. We have to promote ethical investing, good investing types. We have to give good feedback to founders, even though it may be hard to hear it. So we're building that you can come to us and you can find both sides of the coin. You can find the right service providers. We could say Daryl's a good guy for design thinking. You know, John, if you want to export to Ireland, you need to speak to John. So we're a dot connector, but it's not scalable. So my dream is that there's an inertia where the ecosystem builds its own internal rules of behavior. It punishes bad behavior and encourages good behavior. And Dragons is no longer, because as we grow as an ecosystem, Dragons will become a bottleneck. And we're very aware of that. So we want to put in a first layer, but then pull ourselves out as the inertia happens around behaviors and it builds. And if I could just talk to John's point there a bit about the regulators too. In terms of regulation, regulators are built to reduce risk to the grand scheme of things. They're not the evil boogeyman in the corner. They're built so that the Bernie Madoffs, the Stanfords and Antigua don't rob people of money. And we're seeing, because of that, you see it on a scale, right? You don't have many regulators around marketing entities. We have a lot more regulators around fintech because it affects more of the population. But I completely agree with John. The regulators want to do the best thing, especially when you get good governors of central banks. You need to work with them and make them friends. So, we sent out a survey in the chamber for 600 people to give us their feedback on regulation on a particular topic. 3 people write us back, 3. And then the other 597 want to know why nothing's being done. So engage with the lobbying organizations, help the regulators do the right things. They're desperate for information and data. They want to do the right things, but get involved in the conversation rather than leave it alone. And those regulators are part of my ecosystem. So we want to encourage them to have the right behaviors and the right interactions. And that helps the trust layer. We want to build a trust with the regulators and they want to build a trust with us. That comes back to the human thing, the personal thing, and working together.
Thank you very much, Mark. Phillip, what are your ideas about funding innovation, and what would be some of the major issues and challenges for any small state to fund either from the government, from the private sector, even if it's partnership? What are your ideas?
Yeah, right. So what we learned from my work at Caribbean Export is that small businesses, even medium-sized businesses, they love the grant system. And every time we did interviews or surveys, funding is always identified as one of the biggest challenges. What we probably have to do is create the type of platforms where ideas can proliferate and expose these ideas to global audiences, including diaspora audiences. And not that you're giving away IP, but at least put enough of what you want to do on a platform and hopefully with global attention and get something good. But I also, from the more macro perspective, for example, there are some areas that I think the Caribbean is ripe for. For example, virtual reality tourism, augmented reality tourism. Some of the global leaders, they're looking for new content apart from the games and so on. They're looking for new content. I believe that if we partners with the big global leaders in some of these areas and say, come to the Caribbean, let's do something exciting together in this space. I really believe that they would come on board. And then this sort of global collaboration will create an arrowhead of and spillover effects that can drive innovation down the long end of the innovation tail. So let's do something bold with global partners, whether in virtual reality, augmented reality. Say Caribbean is going to be the world leading prototype in virtual destinations. And let's work together and use that as an arrowhead to bring this sort of resources, attention, including finance, to some of the other things we do to complement and support that big vision. Because we simply don't have enough money internally to support a lot of what we need to do.
Okay, so some of the innovation ideas can self-fund. They can self-finance the project.
With global partners coming on board. And
Okay.
I really think a lot of other stuff would follow, long as we're proving concepts and stuff is happening.
So that co-creation will still remain. It will still remain fundamental to driving that innovation.
Absolutely. And what I've learned, a lot of folks don't know what's the next thing coming, you know. Nobody really knows. You got to just be excited about what you're doing and bring people to join this stuff, and let's make things happen. Let's find out, because we don't really know exactly what has to be done. So the learning by doing this is important, and it's to get people with resources excited about what you're doing and say, let's do this together, let's learn together, let's create a shared future together. I'm willing to spend some money on this, and you're the right partner for me. And I think that kind of go-getter kind of attitude is what we need to start to project from the region.
Thank you very much, Phillip. John, looking at that funding, because you spoke of the areas that Ireland used to drive their financing, especially for innovation, the medical profession that you support in Ireland, the IT and the pharmaceutical industry. Those are the three areas, apart from your St. Patrick's Day, which I think all of us know about that one.
Yeah.
So let us hear, as a small Ireland that has now grown in recognition, that funding challenge, how would you have overcome that?
So there's a couple of thoughts, but I suppose just linking back to what the guys are saying, I'm going to go back to the trust word, okay, for a second, okay, because people will only invest in people that they trust. What we did in Ireland didn't come easy, okay, like we tried certain things, but then we had to get into proof of concept. So we used our diaspora to create teams that we could build prototypes with, so that, you know, if we take Mark's talk from earlier on, you know, where he was basically saying we need in the Caribbean to be able to go out to our diaspora and maybe find friends out there who are already operating in other areas and jurisdictions and get involved in prototype projects, okay, that are proof of concept for something, so that you start to build a team, a network that actually proves they can work together and they can trust together. The analogy I will use is that, I mean, the All Blacks regularly talk about this, okay, in rugby. You know, the All Blacks to me are the second, in my unbiased opinion, okay, are the second best rugby team in the world, okay? And they regularly talk in training about, you know, building team and trust. And this concept that when they're charging forward with the ball and they're passing it back, they never look over their shoulder to see, is my team member there? They know they're there. They don't have to do that check. That team is there. And 99 times out of 100, because they've gone through the play, because they've built the prototype, okay, you know, it works. And I think what Mark was talking about, okay, in particular, that model, okay, I could see that working extremely well, because Mark is building a prototype that he taps into Daryl, that he taps into me, that he taps into others, that we have friends, okay, who want to be involved, so that Philip's idea, okay, you know, can be brought to life, can be animated. And so, right, well, we've got people in different areas that can innovate, and that's what we've done, okay, in the past. Okay, we've seen in a small example an Irish Caribbean venture, which is Digicel, okay, you know, which was brought there by Dennis O'Brien, the Irish entrepreneur. He did that because he built the network in Ireland, he built the network in the UK, he built the network in various different countries. He prototyped the Caribbean and then sold it for, I suspect, a not inconsiderable amount of profit, okay, at some point in time. But he didn't do it because he just landed and says, I want to set up a mobile phone company or a mobile phone network. It's because he had connections, he had a team, he had a diaspora, a digital platform diaspora that helped him do that. Okay, so that'll be my take on it. Okay, bring the trust and bring the team together with you. Throw the ball over your shoulder. The member will be there.
Thank you very much, John. I'm seeing Kamala.
Hi, Claire. Yes, you know, this has been such a brilliant panel so far. Some amazing ideas coming through. But I like that we have honed in on what is the actual issue. If we are talking about innovation and change and improvement for the long term, we have recognized that our biggest problem are the obstacles that we ourselves have put in place. And that is our behavior that contributes to the lack of trust that has occurred throughout the region. And Mark, I thought you brilliantly summarized a lot of those challenges, you know, so I can't wait for us to actually get a clip of that and share it even more, because we need to recognize what our problems are if we are going to solve it. And clearly we are seeing that we ourselves have not been able to build very simple bridges that's going to help in strengthening our network. And I love what Phillip shared too, in terms of, so what is our vision for the Caribbean? That should be fundamental to whatever plans we have for long-term success. Because clearly, and this also was shared in yesterday's conference, that you can't do this alone. We need each other, and we need to work together. And for me, well, of course, everybody knows Singapore is such a great example of quality leadership from Lee Kuan Yew, and how a lot of the institutions were strengthened to help ensure that they had long-term success. And John, Ireland is an amazing story for me. When I read the book by President Sarkisian, that is the only time I truly appreciated the struggles that Ireland went through in order to come where it is now. So, but it proves to us that it's not impossible. We are in a space where change can happen at a quantum level. And Ireland was able to make some dramatic changes based on what President Sarkisian wrote, you know, from after the 1980s. So just within the last few decades, you saw the amount of transformation that happened in that country. So we come right back to what has been discussed to a great extent. And I'm just responding a little bit to, I would read this question from Oswald Chisholm, which he had put in the chat. How do we determine trust with the innovation of a new system coming as an unknown to society, which will create the trust and understanding of what it offers? If I understand that question correctly, quite frankly, it begins with trust.
Yeah.
So you can't build the trust afterwards. And I like the answer that was given just now as well. I think, yeah, it was John who just shared. So do your proof of concept and build your network around that. We have to accept our individual responsibilities, that we must be trusted. And to build that, it requires a level of transparency in all that we do.
Yes.
And a willingness to be open and embrace. That's a tall order for us in the Caribbean.
Thanks, Kamala. And another factor is that education, because I don't think that we spoke of it,
Yes.
but I think that at least I would want to have it one of the panelists speak of that education part. Do we
And if
drive
I may-
innovation through education? Are we expecting education to drive innovation? It's that catch-22 scenario. How do you see that playing out?
Claire, I love that question, and I want to throw it at John because that really has been one of the pillars for the transformation in Ireland, their investment in the education system. So, John, can you share with us, how did you achieve that change?
Yeah, and it is that point, okay, because again, back to first principles, what was the value we could add? When, we thought about all these friends and connections we had, what can we do with them? And one of the things as a value add, because we just weren't big enough to be able to manufacture anything, okay, in the 1950s to solve any world need or any world problem. We weren't an industrial, a big industrial power of any sort. So we had to go back to our people. And what do our, what are our people all about? Go back to our culture. Go back to who and what our people are. Our people are, okay, our thinkers. Our people are our inspirers. Our people are our innovators. Now, how do we put a bit of structure around that? We put a bit of structure around that by formalizing the education system around those, to make it as broad-based as we possibly can, to be able to make it, something that people, can say, yeah, I can see how that's adding value. And part of our education system is very much focused around the creation of hope when sometimes it can look like despair. I always think of the great story of an optimist faced with a dilemma, who walks into a horse stable that's half full of horse dung and says, well, there's got to be a horse here somewhere.
Yes, great. And Mark, I wondered, so Claire, forgive me, but Mark, you have started working with secondary schools. So what has been your experience in trying to get those changes in collaborating with the education systems so that you could have new ideas rather than the old curriculum being followed?
Yeah, so I mean, we've worked mostly with the students, not necessarily the practitioners, but I can tell you, young people are incredibly excited about this, and innovation is part of their DNA now, and we're seeing it. People in the Caribbean don't realize there are high potential founders in our midst. And when I say high potential, I just want the audience to understand people who have ideas that are globally scalable, right? Globally scalable. I have at least 10 in the stable in terms of thinking like that. But they don't see barriers, right? The young people don't see barriers because of social media, because of movies around entrepreneurship, because of people. And we have we see a lot of entrepreneurship in Ireland and Silicon Valley in the UK. They're seeing those inspirational stories. And because of technology, especially since COVID, there are no barriers for them. So we had students at our conference, and they asked some of the most provocative questions out there. So I think culture is a huge obstacle, but Ireland surpassed it. Singapore moved past the culture, shifted the culture. Silicon Valley shifted the culture. I am very excited about we are on the cusp of that shift. Just this panel proves it. The fact that the Institute is now honing in on governance, on SMEs and entrepreneurship. The shift is on. This is the time for us to all roll up our sleeves and get involved and help that shift forward. Is my view. And it starts with the young people. And so I'm terribly excited about how much they're excited. It's amazing.
And we have Daryl who wants to say something. Daryl?
Yes, Daryl, we saw you put it in the chat, but yes.
Yeah, I kind of just put it into the chat that I think
Yeah.
education today has really changed quite a bit in Singapore as well. We went into a little bit of problem-based learning, but I think today the strive is no longer about answers, but really about their learning experiences and proving the value of what they think could be that change for tomorrow.
Thank you, Daryl. So Kamala,
Yeah.
handing over to you.
No, but I find this conversation, if persons have time, please, it is so important for us.
Yeah.
Simply because I agree with Mark. We are on the cusp of something really major, and we can either embrace it and be able to move forward, or we lose that opportunity and continue to remain very siloed and fragmented and not able to take advantage of many of the opportunities that are present with us.
And Kamala, if I can say how I know we're on the cusp as well, we have had startups leave. So, you know, we lost two Jamaican ones end of last year to Techstars in the United States, who, if people know, they're a very large global accelerator. They have a chapter, I think, in Europe, and there's a definite chapter in Singapore. And we've lost our founders to them. They're not coming back. They've joined the chapters in the US, and they're accelerated through 16 weeks, and they get some seed investment. And so the GDP, the learnings, the diversity and inclusion DNA, we lose it all to the first world. So the fact is that if the first world is looking to our region to get those founders and those entrepreneurs, you know, they're seeing what we're not seeing, or they're doing what we're not doing. So we are on that cusp, and it's echoed by IDB and PwC. And so we need to make that seismic shift now, and not continue to lose our great potential in the brain drain.
Yes, but I like too that Phillip had shared that, yes, there's a brain drain, but let's also consider the concept of the brain circulation.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
It's important for persons to go out there and gain that experience and be able to navigate successfully, but then bring back that learning and share with us, which then also comes back to that major obstacle. A culture that supports these change, a culture that is open to embracing new ways of doing things, and having that trust and transparency to facilitate persons wanting to come back, rather than think the obstacles that you face is just too much, and so let's just stay in the more developed countries as it is.
So last statements from the panelists, starting with Phillip.
Right, so thank you very much. Right, so if we take a snapshot of the classroom today and how it was 60 years ago, they look very much the same. The structure, everything. So we really need to be bold and say, we're going to make sure the classroom is designed around critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork, and expose our students systematically from kindergarten right up to local and regional problems, and let's give them the space to do it. Now there'll be some reticence, but let's have some pioneers start to prototype new ways of creating this cadre of human resource. Document your successes and share them, and eventually you're gonna get people tagging on. So we have to restructure exactly the space for that human capital development. And I think if we do, there's a bright promise that all of the ideas can then be fomented and developed, and we have the right sort of human capital to attract other partners globally to make the Caribbean enterprise one that is robust and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phillip. Daryl, on to you. We have lost Daryl.
Oh, he's going to type his response because for some reason he has lost the sound, I think.
Right. Okay, so John.
I based my talk today around friends. We are with the Corporate Governance Institute today as our hosts for this. It's a very important membership organization in the Caribbean, but it's not alone. They have friends in Mauritius, they have friends in Dubai, they have friends in Singapore. Maybe we should be tapping into that friend network as well. I'm very closely associated with the Mauritius Institute and with the one in Dubai, particularly the one in Dubai at the moment, where we're actually starting a study trip to Singapore actually next week, where we're going to actually share ideas. And we're bringing small companies in the region, okay, to meet small companies in Singapore. So maybe there's a tool in front of us that is already a mechanism for a proof of concept that we can actually use, a not-for-profit, unbiased organization like a governance institute to share with each other. knowing that we don't have to think about the worries of, is it a big firm that possibly has a commercial or ulterior motive? We have friends among us. Let's use our own institutes.
Thank you very much, John. Mark?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just say two things quickly. First of all, I agree with John. New Zealand is definitely, the All Blacks are definitely the second best rugby team. The first, of course, being the Springboks in South Africa. So I'm sure he meant that when he was saying that.
Of course I did.
And the second thing I'd say is, for me, it's really around the why again, right? So all of the suggestions we made today are fantastic, but we have to focus on the why. And you know, the panel today is on promoting innovation for the long term, so sustainability. So the why is very important. If we don't do these things and hone in on innovation, what do we risk losing as a community, as a region, as a country? And how do we use innovation to get to that highest standard of living for all of our citizens? If we can visualize that and understand that, we can mobilize the politicians, we can mobilize the public sector, the unions, the private sector to get to those to those things. So I would encourage us to focus on how innovation can really leapfrog our world forward to help our people. And once we understand that, everything else kind of falls into place. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So Daryl did have some challenges and keeps on having those. Daryl, last words. Let's hope he can get through.
Thank you, Claire. I thought I'm using another account, so in case you see another picture happening up there, I'm just using my voice from another one. But
Okay.
well, for some
Very
reason,
innovative.
my computer is not unmuting itself. Neither can I type into it. But I'm using another phone. So my closing words, I would think, if you want to make change, I think start by building that community together and do it one at a time with every single person, because everyone matters.
Yes. Human-centric. And thank you very much, Daryl. So Kamla, on to you.